Good evening. I'm Dr. Arun Kalyansundaram, and today we are going to look at how do you bulletproof your heart. And we're gonna, we have absolute control over what we put into our mouth, and if you can control what you eat, you really help um, lessen your chance of having a heart attack. And before I proceed into the actual talk, I would like to tell you that I have some disclosures. I do complex coronary angioplasties, that is put in balloon stents for a living, and I do very complex angioplasties, and I teach people how to do this, and I travel globally to help people treat disease. The next 15 minutes, I'm going to bring you up to speed about the state of affairs in our country. We're going to then switch gears and talk about what is heart disease, what is heart attack. You're going to look at some of the data and finally how to operationalize this. The typical Indian diet. It's very carb heavy. And then the second most important constituent of our diets, unfortunately, it's fat. And a lot of it is saturated fats. And when we look at the carbs, it's typically processed foods and simple sugars. And a small portion of our diet is protein. And fat and animal protein sources in the typical Indian diet, I mean, if you can just see it, this is unfortunately what constitutes the majority of our diets these days, especially with increasing westernization. And the results are out there for all of us to see. I think the pictures are pretty self-explanatory, and so I'll leave it at that. If you look at that, 43% of people with normal body mass index are metabolically unhealthy. What do I mean by that? So body mass index is typically a lot of the data was derived from the Western population. In fact, the revised BMI target for Indians and Asians in particular is 23, not 25. And even those people who have a normal BMI, more than 40% are metabolically unhealthy, meaning they have some deranged sugars, they have a higher cholesterol than what is accepted, etc. And there's a huge proportion of these people that they have no idea. They just live under this thing saying, "Hey, I'm not really overweight. I'm pretty healthy." I'm sure you guys all see the news, and this is just from, maybe it's a little dated. Unfortunately, there have been more deaths since I can have put this together. Um, a lot of notable celebrities have unfortunately succumbed to heart disease in their 40s. Um, this is not the exception, almost seems to be the norm in our country. When I came back from the US, this was really hit me hard. And here are some of the numbers which illustrate how bad the situation really is. Going back almost 7, 8 years, the prevalence of coronary artery disease is almost 55 million. And interestingly, 1 in 4 deaths are because of atherosclerosis. And both heart disease and stroke pretty much come under this umbrella. And even over the last few years, these numbers are increasing, and there seems to be no downward trend at all. Interestingly, just as a throwback, like FDA has approved cholesterol lowering drugs for even dogs. I mean, it seems like we spare nobody. And our country now has the distinction of being the world's largest kind of population. If that didn't worry you, I hope that there was kind of an eye opener. Now let's look at what is heart disease and what is a heart attack. So, number one cause of death globally in the U.S., in India, huge financial burden on the global healthcare expenditure. And then if you look at, there are a couple of types of heart disease. You have coronary artery disease, you have rhythm problems, also known as arrhythmia, and then you have heart failure where the pump itself becomes weak. Many times heart failure happens because of coronary artery disease. Now, what is coronary artery disease? The heart is a pump, as we all know, and the pump this is the main pump, the main organ that pumps blood to the various parts of the body. And the heart also needs oxygen, and the oxygen is supplied via blood, and the blood is taken through coronary arteries. So when the aorta or the big vessel comes out of the heart, the first blood supply that the aorta, the first branches are to the heart itself, because if the pump is not getting enough blood, we have a problem. Now, blockages that form in these blood vessels is basically coronary artery disease. And what happens is that there's plaque buildup. And instead of a smooth laminar flow that should happen through a healthy endothelium, now you have, essentially plaque buildup that reduces the blood flow to the heart muscle. And when this happens, people don't get enough blood to the heart muscle, thereby they don't get enough oxygen. And this causes patients to have symptoms such as chest discomfort when they do things. This is known as the classical angina. Shortness of breath when they are doing things. This can also be a symptom of heart disease, and just exertional fatigue. Now, when this happens suddenly and the plaque just cracks and there's a blood clot that forms, that constitutes a heart attack. So there's a sudden stoppage of blood supply to one portion of the heart's of the heart muscle. Now, what triggers this whole process? There's a lot of complex stuff that you see on the slide, but in essence, there's some injury to the lining, the endothelium. This triggers, and this is basically mediated through inflammation, and then this triggers more deposits of macrophages, fat cells, etc. And sometimes these can rupture, and as I said, can lead to a heart attack or a stroke. Let's look at the data. If you eliminate animal products from your diet, all right, and why do we say we should eliminate them? Because animal products contain fat, saturated fat, and cholesterol is something that's found exclusively in high concentration in animal products. Now, animal products obviously contain animal protein and iron, which basically creates an environment that increases your heart disease risk. Also, if you are consuming a lot of animal products, you're going to reduce the consumption of other food components that are actually protective. Like the green leafy vegetables, your antioxidants, etc., because there's only a finite amount anybody can eat. And what we eat really impacts our health. It's not just coronary artery disease, stroke, certain cancers, diabetes, and hypertension, which kind of lead to coronary artery disease, us being overweight, and osteoporosis, other inflammatory diseases. And if you look at studies that have compared plant-based versus animal-based nutritional programs, those that take a plant-based diet tend to have lower risk of heart disease, lower death rates, lower hypertension, lower diabetes, fewer GI problems, less incidence of some cancers, less osteoporosis, less cholesterol issues. And if we fundamentally go down to the basics, what's wrong with our diet? What's wrong with the Indian diet? Now, there's a lot of sugar, a lot of simple carbs. We tend to fry stuff, even amongst the vegetarians. We tend to deep fry stuff and take out all the nutrients and make the food really unhealthy. It's a lot of refined carbs, and to add to that, now we are increasingly westernizing our diet and incorporating more animal products into our diet. Now, the opposite side of the argument, which I think is really unfounded, is that, well, eating only plants is unhealthy, and we have eaten meat for millennia, so it's okay, etc. Maybe so. And here's the thing: we if you look at our hunter-gatherer lives, used to eat meat or animal-based any kind of foods, rarely when a group of cavemen could actually take down a huge animal and then bring it back. This was a luxury. Most people where the vast majority of the diet still was plant-based. Now, the if you look at whether this is enough and whether this is healthy, and a well-planned plant-based diet, and this includes a vegan diet, can not only be healthy, it's also nutritionally adequate, and it provides health benefits for prevention of a lot of diseases. Now, let's go back to my core area, coronary artery disease. A vegan diet, all right, can really reduce your inflammatory markers such as your C-reactive protein, and it also has shown across various studies that it reduces your probability of dying from coronary artery disease, and so that's a 25% risk reduction when you compare plant-based, people that are plant-based compared to omnivores. Now, this is staggering. 25% risk reduction is huge. Now, we need to get away from a lot of what I just said. So the added oils, the dairy, meat, fish, fowl, the sugary foods, the highly processed, diets that we take. All of these are just not intrinsically bad because of the calories and like the fats, etc., but they also injure your endothelial function. Remember, endothelium was that lining in the blood vessel that actually protects the blood vessels. Now, when this is injured, that's when the trouble starts. Now, food is a major cause of coronary artery disease. Okay. Now there are tons and tons of data, and I could go and show you Dr. Esselstyn's or Dean Ornish's JAMA paper, etc. So those that are interested, either get in touch with me or just do your own research. But there's a ton of data out there. Now, this I wanted to particularly have you guys pay attention to was because this is staggering, right? The left, the vessel, the blood vessel, the white is the blood, is the angiogram, which shows the blood vessel. And here it looks like something is just chewed it out and it becomes really narrow and then becomes broad again. Now, just with, and this is a patient of Dr. Esselstyn's, like he was able to show almost complete reversal. Now, am I going to say that everyone is going to just reverse their heart disease by getting on a plant-based diet? Probably not. But what we do know is that it really helps with reducing progression for sure. And in some cases, maybe reversal. So how do you bulletproof your heart? How do you operationalize all this stuff? I've said a lot of stuff about data, about why, we have a lot of heart disease and why animal foods are generally bad. Let me ask you this. Do you think what I do with stents and bypass surgery actually cures heart disease? Or EECP, we see advertisements out there, it's like, oh, cure heart disease without bypass surgery, chelation, etc. Do these cure heart disease? No, really, I wish they did, but no, they don't. I wish we could do whatever we want. I wish we could, smoke, eat unhealthy, do, drive rashly and live forever. But that's not the way the world works. So let me put this to you in a very simple way. We have one body, right? Like, which is essentially what we got to take all the way up to, like, a moment comes. Let's say you have a really fancy car. You can always buy a new car, remember? But let's say you have a fancy car and you don't have great driving skills. Would you just keep driving badly and every time you have an accident or whatever, just take your car to the body shop and tell them, hey man, it's going to cost this much, just fix your car? You wouldn't do that to your car. How could you do that to your body? You can't buy another body, at least not yet. So, again, this is not to say that there's no role for medicines. This is not one of those surgery, anti-stents. We're not talking about. That's not what we're trying to say. What we are saying is that there is a role, but you know, I am the guy that has the body shop. Okay, here, just like in a mechanic shop, you kind of fix the car mechanically. I can do that. There's no right coronary artery here. And I mean, in fact, this is a chronic total occlusion. And so the cath lab is where I can open up blockages. And so that's really the body shop. But your job, and as you can see, this patient's already had bypass surgery. Graft has failed, and the right coronary artery is fully closed, and that's what we open. Now, again, just so that for those people that don't know what angioplasty and bypass surgery are, I think unfortunately everyone has somebody in their family who has had some cardiac procedure. Um, remember the plaque that reduces flow? Angioplasty and stenting is where we take a wire across, balloon it, and then oftentimes end up putting in a stent so that the vessel is opened up again. Bypass surgery is where when the plaque kind of blocks it, you essentially bypass the blocked area through another artery or a vein, and hence still end up supplying blood to the heart. Okay, so if you really want to take control of your health, you should do everything in your capacity to avoid getting to the body shop, to avoid that accident that can break your car, that can damage your car, right? So you being responsible really is your healthy lifestyle. When we drive, right? Remember way back when you got your license, your parents told you, or your teacher, like I said, you can't be distracted when you're driving. You got to stick to the speed limit. You can't, drink and drive. You got to buckle up. Um, you know, all these rules, you need to have such things for your body, right? So how do you keep how do you keep control? Make sure you have your blood pressure is under good control. If you are a pre-diabetic or a diabetic, work on your lifestyle even more aggressively so that you can reverse this. In fact, Western medicine and evidence-based medicine basically tells you when you have diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, etc., the first 3 months you got to try intense lifestyle therapy. You really have to work on it before you start prescribing medicines. And I think we need to we as in human beings, we need to know that we have more control of our own health. So if you can control what you eat and do it pretty diligently, your need for more, like for the top of the pyramid, like medicine, stents, bypass surgery, etc., will go down. Not to say that there's no role, but you can't not do the basics and then just focus on medication, stents, and surgery. That's really like saying, hey, I'm just going to drive bad and go keep going to the body shop. Don't do that. And cholesterol, again, I've just put it out there. And again, if you're a man, your waist circumference should be less than 90. For women, should be less than 85. Even with an ideal BMI, if you have, and unfortunately, like South Asians tend to have more visceral fat around the organs. These are bad. These are being correlated with bad outcomes. And by bad, I mean like increased risk of heart disease, etc. So we have stringent targets, even more stringent targets than the Western population. So please keep an eye on your metabolic health, control what you eat, and very simply put, food should be real, should be whole foods and plant-based. And here you can kind of see it, right? How do you kind of put this all together? Lots of water, vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, green leafy vegetables, high fat whole foods. Now, this is an awesome program. I love it. Also, there's a power plate from PCRM that's also really helpful. There's a lot of data and there's a lot of resources out there. Just go look out, reach out to us. Happy to help. And finally, if you really want to prevent or reverse heart disease, it's got to be a spectrum. Food is a very, very, very important component. But you also have to move, make sure you have focus on your fitness. You got to manage your stress, your sleep. Definitely, no smoking, and watch that alcohol. And you have to have social connections. Everything matters. And this is my Instagram, whatever you call it. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help. Um, Unfortunately, I'm in another country when this is going live, so I might not be able to join. However, I'm sure Dr. Shah will kind of anchor this very well. And if you do have further questions that you specifically need to ask me, like I said, feel free to reach me on Insta. Happy to get back to you. Thank you, guys.